Yes, I just
myself, like say my name.
because I have to start fill in the ballots, so just need your name.
Alright, well, my name is Yeshwin. I am Prime Minister, and yeah, cool. So starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, what isolationism essentially means is to stay away from other people's businesses. And in our instances, in America as a whole, there is a certain issue that we have to fix, but that can also lead to our benefits. I will prove to you in my speech. Firstly, I'll move on to my framing. Now, what are the primary incentives of the GOP? Well, I guess this is pretty straightforward. It is that they want to win the next election, right? But now, going into second, what is the status quo? Now, for one, America is sending money to both Ukraine and Israel to fund them in the war with, for example, Ukraine with Russia and Israel with Palestine. They're trying to fund them and give them more military units, money, and so forth. But what we tell you is that this has made a lot of people mad because the reason is Americans are generally mad because the tax they pay are just going to causes that they don't support in. And matter of fact, this is just also disrupting their everyday life because they are also struggling in the process. Now, just imagine your government giving money to someone else when your people are already dying as well. That is why they're so mad about it. So Democrats are already unhappy that their money is being sent to Israel. But number two is that Americans are also unhappy over the fact that they're they're becoming over-reliant on China for their economical gain. Now what this means is that essentially they're just not really, what this shows is that they're essentially being over-reliant on other countries and actually not trying to focus on themselves rather than helping others. And this obviously, if it keeps going on, will soon start to ruin the country itself. And obviously people are mad over this because, hey, they don't want their tax money to go in vain. And that is why we provide to you this model on how we will succeed in this election. We can elevate the chances of winning this election. So for one, America will no longer intervene on other countries' matters, whether it be economically or even when it comes to funding them in war. Most importantly, funding them in war, because that's taking a huge money from them. But secondly, on how we will start ramping up domestic productions to rely less on other countries' produce. So this way we can rely more on ourselves rather than other countries. So we can rely on ourselves more to grow. My first argument to back this up on why our model is more likely to succeed, more likely to appeal to voters. Now, firstly, as per the framing, people are already upset over the unwise decisions being made by the current US government. And they're upset that they're out there trying to solve, but in reality they're just failing to do so, but they're trying to solve other countries' issues, but not actually trying to solve their own, not actually trying to mitigate the damage being done to the US's people, to the Americans. So now this put people into struggle, and obviously no one likes that. If I'm paying tax, I obviously wouldn't want to suffer even more. Why am I paying tax then? So obviously they're mad. No, thank you. So what can we do is that we capitalize on their anger. So for one, the first impact is that voters will feel understood. So let's just paint a scenario. US is a representative majority. So even if there are voters that still support Palestine and still support Israel, they still support the belief that they should start funding these countries even more and more, they will be overtaken because of the fact that the majority out there focuses more on the country's personal gain. So obviously this issue will be cut off immediately. So voters will feel much happier. But secondly, on how this would increase the voter turnout for the GOP. Now if you get something worth it to fight for, they would be more likely to vote for this. Well, obviously, we as the GOP, we gave you a model, we're trying to fulfill the wishes of these people. So obviously they will feel, oh, then this is a paradise, this is what we want. So obviously they will vote for us, and this will more likely increase our voters. But thirdly, on how we solidify the swing states. So now votes can go either way, right? And it decides who wins on presidency. Now the GOP convinces that swing states that they are good. So this way we can actually bring in more attraction to these swing states into voting for us, and we also get to increase our second impact, which is the voter turnout. We have more likely chances to increase that. So before I continue, any advice?
Sure. The Republican Party's main principle is to benefit economically. They probably don't prioritize what. This is something that's they already they already do this within status quo. So how does your benefit usually explicit?
So could you repeat that?
So the Republican Party has always been known for opting out away from wants and to prioritize benefiting economically. If your argument was true that the money is sent elsewhere and prioritize impacting other places, why don't you think the argument is not exclusive insofar as this is something that the Republican Party already opted out for?
Alright, thank you for PY. That PY will be answered in my deputy prime minister. Excuse me, how much time do I have?
6
minutes. Okay, with that I am proud to propose. Thank you.
Yeah, how many minutes you have left? And then you end the speech. That's like, we got 10 minutes. Cool, whatever. Alright, now I invite leader of opposition to begin the case for side. Top bench here.
Guys, this round is recorded, just saying.
Need to pee. Wait, I only have one paper. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. You cannot win debates based on uncharitable comparisons. Firstly, the current government is actually a democratic government, so if there's anyone to hate, it's probably the democratic government 8.0. The second thing is, the claim from OG is marginal. People hate the Conservative Party because they are liberal, literally the same as people hating on Democrats likely to be conservative people. I think three things are going to be doing. Firstly, some framing. Second thing, some argument integrated into it, and then impact, and then weight. So then firstly, on the incentives of GOP as a whole, I think firstly, as an actor, they probably want to win elections in order to secure a place in the presidency, right? The second thing, therefore, they have the best incentive and interest to attract actors, such as firstly, swing voters, second, Democrats, and thirdly, conservatives themselves. I think there's some trade-off to be made here, but we'll get into that later. Then they probably their agenda will probably look like MAGA, right? Make America great again. Therefore, they're more likely to do things that are benefiting for the economy rather than engage in wars and stuff like that. This is legit the principle that Donald Trump is running. The third thing here is that they are likely to opt. Okay, never mind. Moving on. Then argument one, right? Minorities will no longer vote for you. I think this is important. Firstly, I'll segue into like the counterfactual and the model, which is status quo. I think isolationism is like symmetrical in our world to a certain extent. Building walls to protect yourself from Mexico, right? I think that counts as isolationism. Except the delta here is that we work with foreign countries. We open our connections and alliances to people outside of USA. So for example, looks like America working with Germany to build roads, I don't know, something like that. But then I think this is likely to be panned out to the greatest extent, and we can prove why. Firstly, campaigns by the GOP are likely for political gain because it's an actor motion. Therefore, these politicians probably have the best intentions to secure presidency in office. Therefore, they're likely to work with foreign countries in order to benefit for their people. The second thing is they're probably to have strong politicians also have incentives because they align with MAGA, make America great again, benefiting economy. Therefore, they are more likely to build economy, which is building alliances with other nations, rather than the comparative, which is Democrats caring more about liberal stances and Western democratic ideologies and caring about the world. Bottom line point here, politicians have to actively align their ideology to maintain a voter base. I think when you isolate, right, you're often okay, then moving on, right, I think where minorities tie into this and the actors that really matter here. I think firstly, right, when you isolate yourself from the world, when you isolate as a GOP, you're often less aware of minority struggles as a party. But therefore, right, I think the intuition behind this is simple. When you are like GOP, right, you probably isolate yourself from like outside interference. Therefore, you're more likely to only care about your own voters and think about what they're talking about. When you isolate like people, you no longer have access to like the struggles that minority pushes out into the world. Therefore, therefore, you're probably at a loss when you compare to like the Democratic Party, for example, which is probably still running their own campaign where they are not isolated. Therefore, they have a better chance of getting these minorities. Before I move on to the impact, I'll take your view.
Can you clarify what your stance on isolationism is?
I think it's comparatively simple, right? I told you that our counterfactual would be that isolationism is symmetrical. It exists to a certain extent. That is like USA builds like wars against Mexico, right? But it's just that not like the GOP itself being isolated in entirety. Okay, moving on to like impact, right? Okay, like I think like the problem with like a lot of the criticism not coming from minorities, right, is that there's probably going to be a lack of accountability from like external bodies. Therefore, that like for example, United Nations not being able to like help hold the GOP accountable anymore because they isolate themselves. The second thing is probably like mass media, like TikTokers and like Gen Z not being able to criticize the government because now they are very isolated and therefore they block off all sort of like foreign interference into their campaign. I think the impacts here are simple. Firstly, because you are unaware, you miss out on important things that minorities need. Also, for example, like necessity things like, for example, more progressive like more progressive right for like the black movement. I don't know, for example, white supremacy like specific laws and regulations that target racism and white supremacy. But then I think second thing here, right, is that the impact here is that minorities feel more appreciative once you don't allow isolationism, that is to debate on the comparative. That is to say that minorities probably feel like they'll probably be more like recognized as a person and an individual by the government because they feel like they allow more criticism to come into the government, allow governments to actually be aware of the changes that they need. But then I think government here is probably going to argue one or two things along these lines. The first thing is like why internal discourse doesn't exist. What does internal discourse just not exist, or okay, I'll take them with their best and say it does exist because I think it does, but to a certain extent it isn't important to this debate. Like sure it happens, but like sure it happens. People still have internal discourse within like this USA, right? And, like minority struggles can still be brought up. But then the problem is here, minorities are now likely to opt into like Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is still running a campaign alongside the Republican Party. Therefore, it's easier for minorities to just say, you know what, fuck the Conservative Party, I'm going to move on into like Democrats instead. So then like, why are minorities so important for like the GOP? I think it's the most important burden we have to fulfill here. The first thing is like I want to like concede the fact that they may not make up a majority of the voter base, but helping them by GOP helping these minorities also means that they are fulfilling the burden of MAGA. So for example here, right, if like I help a minority, I'm likely to convince the voter base to say like, oh, this like government is doing some good. They're helping minorities to make America fulfilled because America isn't like one race only, right? America makes up like Native Indians, all these people. They're trying to make America whole. Even black supporters support like GOP, right? The delta here is that at least on our side, right, GOP helps out the minorities. They show the people that they're helping out minorities, and that at least fulfills the slightest burden that they have, which is to make America great again. I think this itself shows accountability. Like it's important for the government, it's important for GOP to do this because now people feel like there's accountability for the government, therefore they are likely to buy into this because now these minorities are being supported by the government. And then second thing here, we take them at their best and say they claim once they want to debate on like swing states, right? I think we can still call their argument insofar as to say that, for example, swing states, they're probably swing towards the Republicans as well, because now swing states are likely to see progressive change within the GOP. They're likely to see that, oh, minorities are being included inside of the GOP. Therefore, me as a swing state, I'm likely to join into it because I believe, because these are the most vulnerable actors here, they are most likely to believe in the GOP being able to fully execute its burden and obligation to fulfill MAGA. So then bottom line here is, firstly, minorities are now able to fully voice out their voice. Okay, I want to note the comparative bottom line here is that minorities are able to voice out their struggles if they don't isolationism. The second thing here, we prove you that even though like internal discourse happens, it is not important because now minorities can always just move on to Democratic Party. Then the third thing is why minorities are important, because it's only they can help to advocate for like influence towards other people to join the GOP instead, proud to side with OG. Sorry.
Alright, cool. Now I invite Deputy Prime Minister to continue the case beside the government. Here.
Starting the speech in 3, 2, 1. Opposition acts like they know what the GOP. Opposition acts like they know what the GOP wants as a whole. They think that the GOP has an obligation to care about minorities. But two reasons why this are true. Number one, they claim that Republicans have long stood for the policy of isolationism. But we've told you that this obviously isn't untrue to a certain extent, because we've seen like libertarian presidents from the GOP, for example Ronald Reagan, who opted for a lot of kind of progressive policies as a whole. But we also need to highlight the fact that Reagan's presidency as a whole has caused like a lot of controversy as a whole, which is probably like why ever since Reagan's presidency, the GOP has been on a long losing streak. So we already know that from the get-to-go, these kind of libertarian agendas do not sit well with GOP supporters. And that's why we propose the model to start off with. Okay, second, we also have like the entire OG trying to make this all about the minorities. But two reasons why the GOP does not have to give a damn about the minorities. Number one, most of the election takes place in the swing states as mentioned by the Prime Minister. So what this means is that the swing states are obviously majority white in the first place. Sure, that's something that we probably don't know much, but we can tell you that like solidly democratic states, for example California, obviously has like large numbers of black people and stuff like that. But the beauty about swing states is that the vote could truly go either way. So what we want to do right now is make a GOP that actually prioritizes on people in order to incentivize these swing states to vote for them. But why is it that swing states are so important? Because the US elections obviously like rigged to a certain extent to which the electoral college exists. And so we thought that swing states should be a part of this debate if the GOP actually does want to win the election. Okay, second, like, they say that minorities are going to be more likely to vote for the GOP. But we tell you that this is untrue. Something that we have noticed is how the Republicans finally captured Florida once and for all in the governor elections just probably like a year or so ago. We tell you that Florida has like a recent increase in the amount of Latinos and Hispanics there. And we tell you the reason why the bulk of them decided to go to the polling ballot and choose the Republican Party is because right now, the Republican Party's greatest incentive is to clamp down on immigration. And why is it that these illegal immigrants who come into the country want a stop to illegal immigration? Simple, because they want less competition in the first place. So obviously untrue for them to say that minorities are going to run away from the GOP. No, because we tell you that there are obviously minority groups that believe that other people of my kind shouldn't be in this country. So I would want to reserve this not exclusively for myself, to the extent to which they are fine with voting a party that might be somewhat racist in government's characterizations, as long as it means that they still get to benefit from the model that we propose. Okay, so on to my arguments. So we would like to paint you in my arguments, but in America, under the GOP, and this model will look like. So firstly, tell you that the model suggests that money is not going to be channeled to Ukraine anymore. It's not going to be channeled to places like Israel, which has obviously been a ground root for controversy. So what this means is that now the GOP has the perfect chance to prioritize things that Americans are happy about. For example, the lack of healthcare or the lack of affordable housing that's particularly dominant in democratic states where housing is just significantly more expensive there. We tell you that once people see that in Republican states, the house prices are going down and employment is going down, that these democratic states are more likely to have a certain amount of tilt towards the GOP that might further solidify their support in the first place. Second, we tell you... Go ahead.
Democratic voters are likely to align with democratic values. I don't think they'll just swing to like Republican Party for no reason.
Oh, we've already told you as early as PM that a lot of Democratic voters are upset with the fact that money is being sent to Israel right now. And this could be a major tipping point if the GOP is able to capitalize on this form of aid in the first place. Sure, you may argue that to some extent the GOP does support Israel, but what they're not doing right now is sending like billions of dollars of taxpayers' money over there to fund a war that has nothing to do with the Americans in the first place. No, thank you. Okay, second, our second half of our model, like wrapping up domestic production. We told you that Americans are inherently racist, right? They probably can't stand the fact that they are relying too much on China as a whole, or even just Southeast Asian countries or other stuff like that. So we tell you that once the GOP chooses to nationalize a bunch of industries that can ramp up domestic production, which is something the Democrats will never do because the Democratic Party is just built off right now under like Trump and Harris, the administration, Biden and Harris, the entire administration has been focused on catering towards only one single thing, abortion. But this problem right now is that abortion means a lot less to Americans right now with the actual people dying in the streets, dying because they don't have affordable housing, dying because healthcare is just too expensive, they probably have to like sell a kidney just to pay for like, I don't know, cough mixture. So what this means is that even if Op tries to tell you that, oh, there might be some things that might have to go under the GOP government, for example, like the right to abortion and things like that. At the end of the day, as long as life is being made better for Americans through like economic incentives, I think that far outweighs the idea of having rights as a whole, having these kind of insignificant rights. So third, on immigration, I think the most important campaign material that Trump has been bringing up right now, Trump advanced, is obviously on immigration, right? So the GOP, they have to opt some form of obligation to align themselves with what the minorities want in the first place if they want to win the election. And what minorities have proven to want is to stop other minorities from entering the country in the first place because they fear it's going to create some form of competition as a whole. So two reasons why the GOP has an obligation to still cater to the minorities on the side. Simple, they want to stay in power, right? Op tries to tell you that the minorities are such a big tipping point, there's such a large chunk of democratic support that we think that GOP has to water that down, they have to somewhat cater to these immigrants. But will this make their white MAGA cronies angry? We tell you that no, because Republican supporters are obviously capitalists in general. So as long as they're getting some form of profit or monetary value, where they don't have to like sell their kidney just to pay for healthcare, whether they don't have to like go into unaffordable student loans or things like that, we tell you that's inherently a good trade-off for people who support GOP. And finally, onto the extent of which GOP voters might come off from the op bench as irrational or racist, we told you that there obviously exists a lot of college-educated, moderate Republicans in the first place who do stand for things such as abortion and stuff like that. And so, for example, you can see like in the US primaries elections for the GOP, we saw that Nikki Haley actually had like a large amount of support in the first place, although she's an alternative candidate. And second, she's a woman. So it means that people are supposed to be more unlikely to vote for her if we go with statements saying that, oh, like the members of the GOP are so conservative. No, because the fact that women like Nikki Haley, who do support abortion to some extent, are still able to have such a strong place within the party itself, we tell you that the GOP can still be safe. With that, proud to propose.
Alright, thank you very much for wonderful speech. Now I invite Yellow to close off the case for opening off the debate.
So camera, that's it.
Yes. But you don't have to sit there if you want to sit down. You can sit from there.
I feel like much more comfortable being able to like see it. Wait, oh, you can. I think opposite proposition has a really extreme case here. Because note that isolationism isn't just about like stop spending money elsewhere. It's also about cutting economical trades that you've done internationally and you've established internationally. It's also about the trades you have with unions, for example. It also has the things trades like you having oil and gas resources from countries like Venezuela or countries in the Middle East, for example. I don't think the argument is proximate to the moment in which they say they want to stop us. Because I want to prove why this is not the most important issue to solve, but B, the trade that comes with it is far more detrimental. OG is already out of debate the moment in which I started my speech here. But one clarification I want to make quickly because I don't think OG has done sufficient to disprove our case. Number one, we already told you to continue to how to remain under status quo. Therefore, the policies that are like the GOP are likely to opt for is likely to be the same like the things that opted for in 2016 or 2022. This probably means that you're still likely to opt for things like increased international cooperation with the economy. You're also likely to prevent wars, things like how America, Donald Trump heavily opted out into preventing wars with Russia, for example, even though even though there was like but rather we established good connections with Russia, for example. But it also means that you're also likely to emphasize on building the walls, for example. So even then, right, we think that we're still able to like maintain the current conservative voters that still vote within like the conservative party because whatever they want is already like still within this conservative party. First thing about like rebuttals there is how like OG says on how the money are being sent elsewhere, therefore people are unhappy, right? I think the Republican Party's main principle is to benefit the economy. This is something that also agree upon the moment in which they say a lot of Republicans are capitalists, meaning that they're likely to privatize the economy rather than one in the first place. Secondly, it's on how I think that this argument is able to call up their whole entire case on how you stop wars because not only like all these problems are already something that the Republican Party is already trying to solve within status quo, right? But secondly, then is that even if you don't want to buy this idea, I don't think that people really care about stopping war, funding wars outside for two different reasons, right? A,
these wars are funded to maintain America's dominance within the world. They are probably already made brainwashed by the media saying, oh, these wars are actually for a good cause. Therefore, there is no really incentive for them to go against these wars, even if wars will happen under our side of the house. Secondly, there's how these people, these swing voters that they so want to prioritize, probably care about more proximate things towards them. This probably means like making me able to buy food without a really expensive price. I will prove why it's fundamentally worse than under their side of the house. Because when because number one, you don't necessarily need isolationism in order to stop these wars. There are other ways like creating good and establishing good international relationships, like what the GOP is already doing. But we tell you the moment in which you start isolating, you also have to cut a large proportion of economic trade, which directly increases the food prices that people are able to get underground, right? Which I'll further explain later. My main argument is how we inherently increase the voter base. The logical thing is simple. The only thing that I agree from that's like 10 minutes of OG speech is that this debate won't be about swing voters, right? I want to prove two things here. Number one, Americans still have access to different types of media like TikTok, for example. I think they'll probably still be able to see the criticisms from other regions, for example. The problem here is the moment you opt into isolationism, the other partnering countries that you always partner, things like the EU, for example, will directly go against you because their economic incentives is directly being harmed, right? I think even if you don't want to buy this idea, I think the moment in which you opt into it, you're likely to stop your global participation for two different reasons. I think this is like two different things here. A, you probably like to stop funding for Israel now, but this is what our GOP is already doing. But it's not easier. I think under their side of the house, when you opt for isolationism, you probably stop funding wars for Israel, right? I think this is going to be important because it's easier for people to call you out insofar as the majority of Americans support Israel in the first place, right? Second reason here is somehow you essentially lose your place as quote-unquote dominant of the world, right? Because essentially when you pull out from a lot of points and fight into Ukraine, people cannot call you the dominant of the world because you don't continuously help them, right? Because you don't assert your dominance economically into regions like EU or South America, for example. I don't see that people treat you as something as proximate insofar as you only have to prioritize when you serve, right? Second reason here is why isolationism is something that's really extreme, right? Because when you inherently cut out international trade, you also cut away things like proximate resources, things like gas and oil, for example, which America heavily relies on because America has really strong of oil, right? But I also don't think you also cut out things like industry that America heavily prioritized, right? Things like America relies a lot from Taiwan for microchips, for example, right? I think the moment in which you cut out these type of resources, the prices inherently gets cheaper because now America has and the ad gets more expensive because now America has to produce all these things by their own, which by the way they also lack these resources and the manpower to produce this, right? I think it's not easy for other parties to get your parties that are competing against you, parties like the Democratic Party, for example, not call you out because these impact are really proximal. People probably care about not being able to increase prices, right? But before that, you are 3, 2, 1. I don't think both government houses want to defend their case. But here's why you don't lose voters under you do essentially lose voters under their side of the house, right? Number one is because a lot of swing voters are unsustainable, which is by the way they already agree upon this, right? But I think usually these swing voters probably look like two different groups of people. Number one, they probably are very diverse in groups. They probably consist of second generation immigrants. They probably are Chinese people, second gen Chinese or Korean, for example. The reason why these swing voters won't vote for you is the moment in which you cut out because the moment in which you cut out as an agent, you also promote the idea that America is the best. I think my PM has already my OL has already proven strategically why these people are direct harm because they are literally the minority, right? But secondly is how even if you want to take this debate into more neutral blacks and whites, for example, these people probably care about the proximal economic harm towards them, right? I think when you essentially increase the prices of food, you essentially destroy the lives of people. We also a lot of these people also probably rely on investment from other countries like EU, for example, for their jobs, right? I think these people also essentially lose their jobs. Then also on how you get bashed internationally, right, on social media platforms, whereas these swing voters are heavily exposed to. Then secondly is how having the Democratic Party going against you isn't something that's most strategic insofar as you prove to you why it's really unsustainable now. Then secondly how economical impact is something that's proximate to everyone. Not only swing voters care about it, I think even your own voters will care for it because your own voters want to protect their own lives. I think when Democratic Party or people can call you out for not carrying the economy proximate enough, I think also essentially lose the people who are currently voting for you. If you want the world to increase voter base, you vote for a world which all gives to you. Very much.
Alright, thank you very much for the wonderful speech. Now I invite member of government to begin the case for closing lecture here. You want to be in the camera or not? You want to be in the camera or not? Then you have to be or just end it. Can you muna
Oh wait, my name is Libra. Hi. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Let's talk about the status quo of the GOP, right? We see that it's obviously they have an extremely declining voter base, right? After Trump said something along the lines of they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, and they're eating the pets of our home. We see that the fact that the GOP is literally under such like horrible discrimination, right? Where Trump literally called like immigrants like illegal aliens or some shit, right? Oh, like some stuff, right? We say that at some point, right? We say that the status quo of the GOP is not looking good, and the fact that they have an extreme decline in voter base, especially with like Trump's words. So what we're trying to say here that okay, number 2, second layer of characterization. What really is isolationism? I think that it hasn't been really clarified by both houses, which is kind of sad, right? That's why I'm going to tell you this in closing. Number 1, we say that isolationism looks like keeping and continuing to campaign on your own voter base rather than trying to convince other voter bases, right? That means that you focus on your voter base and you spend all your resources trying to empower your voter base, like to make sure that they're still there, that they're still going to vote for you, right? I think that why is this a better definition than actually nah, I think this is the only definition that has been given, right? I think that like what does isolationism look like, right? We say that it can look like feeding your anti-immigration propaganda to the people that actually agree with you, right? Because at this point, right, if you still have voter base, right, I think those voters are like they also hate immigrants and they probably also hate like LGBTQ or diversity, right? When which directly clashes with OO, right? When OO talks about they want to focus on the minorities, I don't think that's true, right? Because I think that GOP, they're all racist and proud to be racist. They're all like anti-abortion and they're all like they're happy to be anti-abortion, right? So the fact that like, if you're still going to stand with Trump after the ridiculous things he said, I think you probably are going to be on more of the extreme sides and you probably do hate immigrants, right? So at the end of the day, what does isolationism look like on our side? We tell you it looks like feeding them anti-immigration propaganda. That means telling them that yes, if you vote for me, if you're going to vote for me, hashtag no more immigrants or like no one's going to steal our jobs now, later, right? We talk about like, we tell that it also looks like adhering to what they want. That means that when you adhere to what they want, giving the people what they want, aka, I don't know, like, yeah, right. We say that on this side, we say that we are more collectible, right? Why is this true? We say that when we have a stronger stance, rather than trying to convince other people to like vote for you when you're already like obviously not going to be voted for anymore, I think that on our side we are able to be more palatable and actually stand with our stance, right? And I think when we are more palatable, you are at least able to like garner your only voter base that is like very small amount already. So like yeah, okay, why is this the best way, right? I think that number 1, we see the fan base is already crippling, right? And number 2, right, we see that it's already like going like it's gonna happen soon later, right? We see that like you shouldn't waste more resources trying to convince other people to vote for you when they obviously aren't gonna vote for you anymore. Especially when Donald Trump looks like he literally has no plan, right? When Kamala Harris asks him like, oh, what's your plan for like the small businesses? Rose like, I actually don't know, we're gonna figure that out later, right? Especially with the fact that GOP is literally like receiving a lot of hate right now. I think that like we say that it's better for them to empower their voter base and focus on isolationism rather than trying to convince like I don't know other parties or like the swing voters to vote for you, right? Because I don't think people want to vote for you anymore, especially yeah, sure.
Wait, isn't the Republican Party already opted out for things like building walls and anti-immigration laws in the status quo? How does your argument even stand or even become mutually exclusive?
Wait, can you repeat that?
Like, isn't the Republican Party already already opted out for things like building more walls against the Mexican border or solving immigration within status quo? Then how does your argument be mutually exclusive?
Okay, I actually don't. Okay, from what I understand, you're trying to say that like it already happens in the status quo, so like there's no difference. I think that this is literally like Trump's like his literal idea, right? And we say that like if like another party like comes into the picture and they win the debate, I mean like win the election, then this what do you call it? This law probably wouldn't happen anymore, like or like anti-immigration won't happen anymore. So yeah, okay, anyways, right? I think like okay, onto some rebuttals and like kicking out these chunks. So let's start with Ola. I think Ola tells us two main things, right? Number one, they tell us that like on our side the economy gets harmed, and number two, minorities aren't like taken account into the taken account. Okay, number one, response to the better economy thing, right? I think that number one, USA literally is one of the strongest forms of currency, right? I think they are very strong on their own. We say that like this, and even if they are not strong on their own, right? We say that this isn't in the context of what GOP wants, right? Because at the end of the day, if they don't even get voted in, which like no offense, I don't think they're gonna get voted in anymore. But like if they don't even get voted in, we say that like on your side, the economy is gonna get harmed harder, right? Like you don't even get to like pursue your cool relations anymore because of the fact that they're not gonna get voted in, right? And the fact when they don't get voted in, I guess it's worse on your side because like they don't get to practice whatever they want, right? So like they don't get to like I don't protect the minorities, which they obviously have no incentive to want to do so, right? And then talking about OG, right? So why do we differentiate over OG? Number one, we tell you that we exclusively tell you what isolationism is, right? We paint you a very perfect picture, a very cool picture of what it actually looks like and what it actually does. But then we also tell you what exclusively it helps you to do, right? Because like OG just tells us like two things, right? Number one, they say that people on their side get housing, or like number two, swing states need to be part of. Okay, I don't know what they're actually talking about. But like when they talk about like now people get housing, I think that like I don't know how true that is because like I don't think Trump really wants people to get like cheap housing. But like yeah, so awesome, right? And they tell us that like they tell us that like Democrats are unhappy because of Israel and stuff. I think that Trump will continue wanting to support Israel, right? I think like Trump loves Israel. So I don't know what the case is like. This is a bit like it's like contradicting with what the GOP actually wants at the end of the day. Okay, so why do we win this debate overall, right? Number one, I think it's very clear on Stack C that we bring to the exclusive like definition of what isolationism is, where it's like super messy, right? And number two, we tell you exclusively why it's the best way, right? Especially when we tell you that your fan base is already crippling, and we say that when you waste resources convincing others, like as in OO, right? We say that you're not like on OO's the best case scenario, I don't know, is literally not gonna be voted into being in power in the first place. So like that kind of just sucks at both ends, right? So overall, we tell you that number one, as the GOP, you would rather use isolationism because of the fact that your voter base is already crippling, and it's so much safer to at least keep some of your voter base rather trying to get more to people that probably hate you now. And like I don't know what Trump is gonna say if like he continues to campaign because like he's kind of goofy, right? So at the end of the day, we tell you that with isolationism, at least you empower your own voter base, which I guess when you empower your voter base, I don't know, like your propaganda spreads or something, right? And like you get a higher voter turnout at the end of the day. So yeah, if the metric is which side is better able to help GOP win, I think it's exclusive on our side lah. Because of they're just gonna yap more and they're just gonna lose the debate even more. I mean lose the campaign even more because like people hate them even more. Yay!
Oh, amazing. Now moving on to the last to CO member of the here.
I really hate this. I hate how the moves laid out.
Yeah. I hate this debate. I hate this show. I hate this motion. I hate this. Next time, set the info slide. Set a fucking info slide.
Alright, starting in 3, 2, 1. I think that government side is just like really tunnel vision on their form of isolationism, right? Because like their form of isolationism is purely on like the people of America, and then like secluding yourself and like only focusing on your own political parties and all that stuff, right? But then like they don't take into consideration the isolationism on like the more global scale, which is way more important and impactful in this debate in the first place. Because like isolationism on their side, because like when they campaign for isolationism in this way, then that is just like them using isolation as part of their agenda as to get people to vote them, because like they want people to think that they believe in this thing, and like they will pass laws that do support isolationism in some way, right? But then isolationism is just really, really negative, right? Especially for people, especially as the GOP, right? Because the main principle of the GOP, as the actor, we are capitalists, as all sides agree with. So, and like a main part about all of the things that are opposite of isolation, the things that are in status quo, which is us intervening in other nations, us like supporting many wars across everywhere, is because of the money that we get from that. As capitalists, as people who as the status quo, right? Right? Because like the wars that we support right now, the reason that we do is because of all the money that we earn from it. You know, like the military-industrial complex, all of the weapons that we sell towards these people. That is what makes us the most money right now. That is what that is one of America's main sources of income right now. So by like immediately cutting that off as part of your campaigning is, you know, incredibly detrimental towards your agenda as the GOP, right? Because then you would be cutting out a massive part of your income, which is, you know, going against the principles of the GOP, right? And other than that, it's just like the more inherent harms of isolationism and the fact that, you know, people wouldn't support your cause because you want to push isolationism, right? Because the main reason why America does support all of these, you know, smaller countries like, you know, Taiwan, like Israel, like maybe not Israel, like yeah, Taiwan, South Korea, all those countries, is because they go against. It's because like they hate the communist parties that they are enemies with. Like, you know, Taiwan is enemies with China, and like South Korea with North Korea, and like Ukraine with Russia, right? Like those countries are directly against the countries that they support are directly against countries that America hates, which is, you know, all these communist parties, which means that like if you do support isolation, America has a very high chance of getting overthrown because you are giving more, because by pulling out the resources, by like stopping the support of all these wars, like, you know, you essentially are giving more power towards the countries that have a chance of overthrowing America, which is, you know, not something that is within the interest of the people. People, you know, they want to stay in their own freedom land, rob, guns, and shit, right? But yeah, so like people would more likely than not rather not vote for the GOP in the first place because these inherent harms are there. People do not, you know, want to be overthrown. People are capitalists. Like America is an inherently capitalist nation where most people over there, they want to, yeah. So like by cutting out, so by supporting isolationism, I think that government is like, yeah, government is just really focused on the people and themselves, like, you know, all these stuff about minorities, healthcare, all stuff like that doesn't really matter when on a global scale. If you do, if your main agenda, if isolationism is part of your main agenda, then that would just give you a chance to be overthrown, be overtaken by the enemies of America. So by like, you know, only supporting your own people, by like only focusing on all these stuff, like it really just makes America weaker on the long run, which is why people would not vote for the GOP, which is, you know, like, and plus like majority of America is mostly all, you know, these like stereotypical white conservative people. So like by just maintaining status quo, it is more likely that you will get voted into power anyway. Wait, what time is it?
4 more minutes.
Okay.
Alright, amazing. Now let's end the Gov Bench with Gov here.
Is there a chance to learn?
No. Because that didn't sound urgent. So.
Give me 1 minute.
But remember, that is questionable. Questionable. Because you got a straight one. How do you
with okay, start in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so I'll just start with some responses and I'll go through the houses as to why, just not only just responses but also kind of like weighing about how we obviously win higher on this side, right? Coming into opening opposition is that, no, coming into opening government is that we tell you that what going into that group is that we're coming is that they're not only giving, they say that they were not giving to minorities, right? That somehow the GOP is actually not considering minorities and what they need and not listening to them. And I think we've all already talked about how they never ever listen to minorities. I mean, talk about building walls in Mexico. I mean, they don't even care about the immigrants, right? I think my first speaker actually come out and say that they're calling immigrants illegal aliens and saying that they're not only from prison but getting transgender operations. I think that the entire part of the GOP is specifically on hating the immigrants and anti-immigration propaganda. And also on the next part, right, is that why that they have a better economy because they don't close themselves off, right? And I think we operate with the same definition of isolationism, where like you just close yourself off in different countries, right? Is that when they have a better economy, because isolation like somehow like fucks up the economy, right? Is that the Republicans like Trump has consistently like face-effed the idea of a good economy, right? Is that moreover the idea of having a closed economy is so much better than to actually because like let's be real here, having a better economy would probably mean like more immigrants, etc. And like if we're like, as the GOP and as a campaigning party, right? If our campaign was more so about the fact of Republicans and what they want in anti-immigration laws, is that we're able to trade off things like a good economy, things like I don't know, listening to minorities and whatnot. If it meant that we're speaking to a voter base, our Republicans, in a way that actually makes them listen, because we've been feeding these Republicans or these Republican voter bases with anti-immigration laws or anti-immigration propaganda for the longest time. This looks like if we were to actually let them immigrate in via like a better economy or via any other, via anti-isolationism, is that they would probably have things like higher tax, higher house prices, they lose their jobs. Because of all these propaganda, because of all these things, right, we end up like not speaking in incentive of our voter base as the GOP or as towards the Republicans, right? And purely because of this, I think that they don't understand what Republicans want, what the Republican Party wants, and just generally not really interacting with the motion as the actor in this motion. But I think I'll also be contending with a bit of OG, right? We tell you that what isolationism looks like. I think we kind of already discussed this, but I'm just going to sum it up, is that it's mostly just cutting yourself and folding in, but cutting yourself off from the rest of the world and folding in, right? But it's not in a way of just politically, it's also like what opposition is like, but more so about like immigration, more so about like connection, more so about connection. Because what opposition, what they actually push, right, about how you can retain this weird power dynamic and how you can stay the strongest country purely because you have connections and relations, right? We would rather trade all of that off if it meant that we were able to actually retain this voter base when they just purely don't want immigrants, right? Or that basing off of like isolationism where it's majority of what they want. And I think that we stay within this debate because we stay within the what the actor and what the actor's voter base looks like. So further on, like yeah, they don't really think about what the actor wants, and I think that this is a major part or major difficulty within this case, right? Is that or within this debate is that people don't really interact with the motion in the sense that you're not really considering what real Republicans want and what real Republicans have been experiencing within Republican ideals for the longest time, right? Then let's go into like CO, right? Is that if you say that if you say that no one, they say that, sorry, I'm trying to wrap my head around my face. They say that Americans are capitalists, and by being isolated, we cannot get our main source of income, which is through military. I don't know how participating in wars is somehow a main source of income. It more so sounds like the fact that if you were to like they don't want to talk about Israel, which is basically them supporting genocide or whatever. Is that they don't want to talk about Israel, but they want to talk about how like by supporting these wars and being militarily active and being internationally active, that they somehow garner some amount of income. Like maybe they mean like by selling military weapons or somehow. But we say that in the idea of what the Republican voter base looks like, in the idea of what's insofar as we've seen what the Republican government party looks like, is that this isn't really a major issue. We still have military. The whole point about nationalism in the Republican sense and among America, right, is that you're just good at military. We've already proven that as America, that we're pretty much the strongest military in the world. We spend like billions upon billions, trillions of dollars in just military. I don't know why you can only like prove how you're the best in the country or how you can still maintain like military power or whatever and still, I don't know, win out on that end, right? But more so about the fact that the harm of isolation is that no one supports it. I think that the fact that the motion talks about why, like the fact that we ever bring up the campaigning of isolationism in the first place, and also understanding what isolationism looks like, is that it is very relevant and that there are people who support it. And I think we've already proven this via the idea that, how you say, that majority of the Republican voter base is actually anti-immigration by not isolating. Like the idea of isolationism in the first place is to close yourself off to the rest of the world. That means that there'll be no immigrants, and yeah, that also means like you have no connections, you have no relations whatsoever. We don't really care about that, but we also care about the fact that we don't want immigrants. Sorry, we don't want those things because it's just not what the public wants. And I think that that a lot of people don't really contend with this idea that we just don't really want such ideals, right?
Alright, thank you very much for the speech. Now I invite the last speaker of TV, Dr. here. Aubrey.
Okay, well, it's fine.
Nia. Nia. Dah.
Okay, I'm Luchun Gate, he, him pronouns, and I'll start my speech in 3, 2.
Sorry. So, in here there's only Shai and Adila.
I'm waiting for Adila because she's sick.
So you are Adila?
No, I'm her replacement.
Yeah, but
Sweet.
in the text here it's Adila
Call
lah.
me Adila.
Yeah, just call yourself Adila at this point.
I'm
Okay.
Adila, she, her pronouns. I'm sorry everyone.
It's all recorded by the way.
Oh, you know her pronouns, huh?
Is she?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Adila, she, her pronouns, and start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Now, government might as well just give the entire presidency to Kamala Harris at this point because GOP is never going to actually get elected into presidency and will never actually materialize anything that comes out from what they say when we enact this sort of isolationism as a platform of GOP, right? So, first of all, this whole debacle of all of these definitions of isolationism in itself, like what OG has stated, what CG has stated, what politically, or like just in a sense, it's just shutting yourself in and not interfering with anyone else. I hope that is already clear at this point of the debate. So now let me move towards countering whatever CG has stated in this debate. So what CG has brought up in this debate is essentially like what we want to. We want isolationism so that we don't have immigrants. We want isolationism so that what we can I don't know, that for them it's like just fuck the economy, I guess, because they don't want trades anymore. They don't want anything related to any other country anymore. At this point, we might as well just shut down everything that's related to America outside of America at this point, because when we look into isolationism, when we actually go into isolationism and its definition, it is essentially shutting yourself inside and just building yourself inside of your own country, right? That in itself basically makes that any American products, anything that is related to America in the world, essentially just goes down anywhere else in the world, other than if you are in America, I guess. So that is just in itself whatever government is trying to bring up in this debate. So first of all, I do not see why suddenly all of these swing voters, all these Democrats, and even these conservatives that have been loyal to the Republican Party all this while would actually essentially want to subscribe to this whole agenda that the GOP is going to push forward. And I do not understand on the fact why would a country want to suddenly just shut itself out? Why a global superpower like the US want to shut itself out when it has all of the resources to be able to grow itself outside of the world, outside of its own country, and when it has all of these resources and all of these connections that it is able to use to be able to grow itself at the end of the day, right? When we say that when the Democrats are able to use these outside connections and have these trades outside of the country of America, we say that at the end of the day, they are just simply going to allow GOP to just fall at itself and just allow these Democrats to be able to go and become presidency and do whatever or not, right? When they say that what Trump is already making a bad name for the GOP, we say that isolationism would make it even worse. Why is that? First of all, because when you shut out yourself from the entire place, the economy goes to shit. Why is that? Because when you stop trade, when you stop dealing with other countries, when you immediately just halt at all of that and just stop all of it in a whole, then you essentially give yourself up to the fact of we need the basic knowledge of economics is essentially you want to sell things so you can get money, right? You can get profits from selling things. And if you're only selling to your American people, then what kind of market is rather than towards the market of a global presence, right? So essentially at that point, why would you actually even be on an economic standpoint? And second of all, when you talk about immigration and whatnot, I don't understand why you bring why is this related to the debate, but sure. Okay, immigration. So let's say if we want to avoid immigration, right? So why we could enact anti-immigration policies, we could do other things. Why isolationism, where we essentially shut ourselves out from the world as a whole, right? Because first of all, it brings all of these disadvantages, and second of all, then it doesn't really help in fixing the problem. Like when we shut ourselves in, it doesn't mean that people cannot illegally immigrate into our country or whatnot. So I don't see how that actually helps with immigration at all. So now moving on to what they say about what the Republican supporters are not really going to support Trump because he said all these bad things about them, right? So okay, when then why is it that what your side is trying to say that isolationism is the way they should go? They should go towards things like making a better healthcare than Obamacare. They should go into things like essentially making a better anti-immigration system. They should go into all of these things rather than going into isolationism that first of all does not solve any of their problems, and second of all, does that have actually any advantages at the end of the day? Yes.
You're arguing in a world that doesn't exist. This is a campaign. This is not a way the country is functioning currently.
Okay, so when let's say in your world, let's say if both sides wants GOP to be presidency, right? Both sides wants to be elected. So what if they are elected? Then this will happen. Isolationism. So people would look into it, people will foresight it, and people would essentially, why would I vote for something that's going to kill the country as a whole? Why would I vote for something that is going to make things expensive, that's going to do all of these things? Now, moving on to what OG has said. OG has said that we're using all these tax money to fund other wars and all whatnot. Well, we prove to you that essentially we get money from these wars from selling all of our military equipment, from all of from all of the things that we do in these countries, and we show that how America would fall in a global scale when we do isolationism, right? So I don't believe. Sorry. Okay, so I don't believe why a person in their right mind would actually want to support this. And now let us extend from what OO has stated. So OO has, so we differentiate ourselves from OO by the fact that we see that we are able to get money from wars and from funding all of these other countries that we have in front against our enemies, and to say that when we lose this sort of front where we are able to control our enemies, we essentially lose out at a larger scale in a larger scale. With that, I'm now with Padam to oppose. Thank you.
Alright, thank you very much.